I found myself standing on the doorstep of my childhood residence on the evening before Christmas, dressed in a second-hand winter jacket and clutching a worn handbag I had purchased at a consignment shop. Through the frosted windows, my relatives were gathered to honor my sister Sloane's elevation to Chief Executive Officer, a position that came with a compensation package of $500,000 annually. They had summoned me deliberately to bear witness to her victory and wallow in the shame of what they perceived as my spectacular underachievement. What remained concealed from their awareness was that I held ownership of Nexus Forge Technologies, a corporation valued at approximately $1.2 billion. I was moments away from witnessing precisely how vicious human beings become when they assume you possess absolutely nothing worth protecting. The entrance swung open before my knuckles could make contact, and there stood my mother Cordelia, adorned in her most elegant, festive attire. Her welcoming expression appeared rehearsed, the variety typically reserved for acquaintances one barely tolerates, or neighbors who overstay their welcome. "Vivian, you actually came," she remarked, stepping backward without extending any embrace. The entire group has congregated in the main gathering space. Sloane just returned from her workplace. I shuffled through the threshold, tugging at my intentionally shabby outerwear. The interior was saturated with the fragrance of holiday spices and premium vintage, with evergreen garlands artfully arranged along the staircase railing. Members of our extended clan occupied every corner, their animated discussions producing a cozy murmur that immediately diminished the instant I materialized. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence," my father Sterling announced from his preferred armchair, his attention barely lifting from the electronic device in his hands. "We had almost concluded you couldn't secure permission to leave that little shop where you stock shelves." Aunt Margot materialized before me wearing her trademark expression of manufactured worry, the one she deployed exclusively when examining the misfortunes of others. "Vivienne, darling, the entire family has been so anxious about your circumstances, residing in solitude in that minuscule dwelling, earning hourly wages in retail at your stage of life." I responded with a mechanical nod, executing my performance flawlessly. "The shop occupies most of my time. I feel fortunate to have reliable employment." "Reliable employment," Uncle Reginald echoed with an amused snort, rotating the amber liquid in his crystal tumbler. "That's certainly a perspective one could adopt. By the time I reached 32, I had already established my own financial consulting practice." Cousin Tatum appeared at his elbow, her accomplishments in commercial property sales broadcasting from every piece of expensive jewelry adorning her frame. "And speaking of accomplishment, just wait until you learn the details of Sloane's advancement. $500,000 annually. Can you wrap your mind around that figure?" And here I believed my commission checks were noteworthy. Before I could formulate a response, the distinctive percussion of designer footwear against hardwood flooring heralded my sister's arrival. She glided into the space wearing an impeccably tailored midnight blue ensemble that likely exceeded most individuals' monthly housing expenses. The diamond mounted on her engagement band captured the overhead illumination and scattered prismatic reflections throughout the room. "My apologies for the delayed arrival, everyone," Sloane proclaimed, receiving affectionate greetings and expressions of admiration from the assembled relatives. A conference call with the governing board extended longer than anticipated. Such is the burden when your decisions impact the livelihoods of hundreds of workers. Her gaze eventually discovered me positioned near the entryway closet, still gripping my decrepit purse. "Vivienne, I'm rather astonished you bothered attending. I recognize that gatherings with relatives no longer appeal to you. I couldn't possibly forgo the celebration of your achievement," I answered softly. "Congratulations on the advancement." Sloane's smile acquired a razor's edge. "I appreciate that. It's remarkable what unfolds when you establish authentic objectives and pursue them with dedication. Prescott and I have already commenced our search for residences in the prestigious neighborhood." Her betrothed Prescott emerged from the kitchen area, wine vessel in hand, and positioned his arm around Sloane's midsection. "We're considering properties with dedicated workspace and separate living quarters for visitors. Vivian, you really must witness the estates we've been evaluating. The most modest option exceeds 4,000 square feet." "That sounds marvelous," I uttered barely above a whisper, observing how every person present gravitated toward Sloane's accomplishments, while strategically avoiding any prolonged interaction with me. Grandmother Lenore made her way over with the assistance of her walking stick, her head moving side to side in disappointment. "Vivian, my child, what became of that brilliant young woman who claimed first place in the regional science competition during secondary school? You demonstrated such tremendous promise. Life occasionally ventures in unforeseen directions," I offered, sustaining my appearance of resignation. "Unforeseen directions," my mother echoed, occupied with distributing appetizers across the central table surface. "That's certainly an interpretation one might employ. Sloan, do share with everyone the details of your new workspace. The photographs you presented were absolutely stunning." As Sloan embarked on an elaborate portrayal of her executive suite overlooking the metropolitan skyline, I studied how the catering personnel navigated the environment with practiced efficiency. My parents scarcely registered their existence, regarding them as though they were inanimate fixtures. The servers maintained their composure and expertise, though I detected the occasional discreet roll of eyes when family members issued imperious demands, absent any expressions of gratitude. The dialogue swirled past me like currents around an immovable boulder. They explored Sloane's corporate triumphs, Prescott's trajectory toward senior partnership at his legal practice, Tatum's most recent property transactions, and Uncle Reginald's plans for life after professional retirement. Whenever someone directed an inquiry toward me, it bore the unmistakable quality of mandatory courtesy rather than authentic curiosity. "Vivian has secured employment at that quaint bookshop in the commercial district," my mother clarified to an acquaintance of the family who had questioned my occupation. "It's nothing substantial, but it provides her with purpose. Reading material has its merits." The acquaintance responded with the particular variety of expression people manufacture when positive commentary eludes them. Sloan positioned herself adjacent to the fireplace mantel where my parents had exhibited her professional portraits and recent articles featuring her achievements. I never anticipated ascending to the executive level at such a youthful age, but when possibility presents itself, one must demonstrate readiness to embrace it. And certain individuals among us demonstrate that readiness. Uncle Reginald supplemented with deliberate emphasis, while others remain in the process of discovering their path. The verbal thrust landed precisely where intended, yet I absorbed the impact without visible reaction. Instead, I continued monitoring my family's behavioral patterns, cataloging how they vied for Sloane's favor, while simultaneously marginalizing my presence. The scene resembled observing wildlife documentary footage depicting hierarchical pack dynamics. As the hours advanced, I positioned myself within earshot of my parents' hushed exchange in the food preparation area as they organized the dessert presentation. They remained oblivious to my presence in the adjacent corridor, and their words traveled distinctly through the open passage. "Are you absolutely certain about proceeding tonight?" my father inquired. "This seems rather severe, even by our usual standards. She requires confrontation with reality," my mother countered with conviction. "Sloane's achievement throws into sharp relief just how far behind Vivienne has drifted. Perhaps exposure to the intervention documentation will inspire her toward meaningful transformation. The entire clan has committed to participation." Everyone concurred. We cannot perpetually enable her acceptance of mediocrity. Sloan has prepared discussion frameworks for each participant, and we've assembled the employment forms. The moment has arrived for some difficult truths delivered with familial concern. My internal organs constricted as comprehension dawned that they had orchestrated something considerably more malicious than straightforward mortification. This gathering transcended mere celebration of Sloane's professional victory. It constituted a synchronized assault engineered to demolish whatever remaining self-worth they imagined I still possessed. They had no conception that they were preparing to demean an individual who provided employment for more than 3,000 personnel and had constructed a technological empire through sheer determination. I retreated silently to the main gathering space where Sloan was elaborating on her organization's forthcoming growth initiatives. The relatives absorbed every syllable, posing perceptive questions and providing enthusiastic endorsement. The disparity between their treatment of her versus me could not have manifested more starkly. "Tomorrow promises to deliver even greater excitement," Sloan declared, consulting her mobile device. "I'm finalizing an alliance that possesses the potential to revolutionize everything." The meal proceeded with ritualistic exactitude. each course punctuated by expressions of appreciation for Sloane's accomplishments. I occupied the distant terminus of the dining surface, moving food around my plate while absorbing comprehensive examinations of her professional path and prospective capabilities. The entire exchange felt choreographed, as though every participant had rehearsed their assigned function. Following the primary course, my father elevated himself and produced a ringing tone by striking his wine vessel with his utensil. Prior to the final course, we have several ceremonial recognitions to bestow. Sloane radiated satisfaction as Uncle Reginald retrieved an ornamental container from the entrance hall storage. Initially, we desire to appropriately acknowledge our family's newest chief executive officer, he proclaimed, presenting Sloane with a sophisticated wooden recognition piece bearing her name and professional designation engraved across its surface. The relatives erupted in celebration while Sloane arranged herself for commemorative images alongside her tribute. Prescott captured innumerable photographs, vowing to display the finest selections in their eventual residential workspace. "And now," my mother continued, her vocal quality assuming an altered tenor, "we have prepared something for Vivian as well." Aunt Margot advanced, bearing a considerably more substantial container, her features projecting manufactured optimism. "We recognize you've been facing difficulties recently, my dear, so we assembled some items that might prove beneficial." I received the offering with visibly unsteady hands, executing my function as the appreciative yet bewildered family disappointment. The contents revealed a collection of items that would have registered as offensive had they not been so exquisitely predictable. Financial management instructional materials, discount retailer certificates, and employment applications for entry-level positions at nearby establishments. We conducted research into opportunities that might suit your circumstances. Tatum elaborated, extracting one of the application documents. "There's an administrative position available at my property firm, and Uncle Reginald has information about a document organization role at his company. The crucial element is initiating forward movement," my mother appended. "You cannot continue meandering through existence without direction." Sloane inclined forward, her voice adopting the condescending register she likely employed with underperforming subordinates. "I've actually devoted considerable thought to this matter, and I've formulated a proposition. My new position grants me authority to engage a personal executive coordinator. The compensation wouldn't be substantial, perhaps $30,000 annually, but it would provide you with framework and direction." The relatives murmured endorsement of this magnanimous proposal, commending Sloane's generosity in considering her foundering sibling. I clutched the container, compelling moisture into my eyes to perfect the theatrical presentation. "That's extraordinarily kind," I breathed. "I'm at a loss for words." "The appropriate word is acceptance," Uncle Reginald pressed. "Sloane is extending you the chance to participate in something consequential, rather than concealing yourself in that reading establishment." Grandmother Lenore nodded with vigor. During my generation, relatives supported relatives. "Sloane is demonstrating remarkable graciousness considering the circumstances." "Considering what circumstances?" I inquired, though I harbored suspicions about the forthcoming response. "Well, my child," Grandmother Lenore proceeded, "you haven't precisely brought distinction to the family name. While Sloane was constructing her professional trajectory, you remained satisfied with minimum compensation employment and that confined little dwelling space. The time has arrived to embrace assistance from those possessing superior judgment." Prescott produced a clearing sound from his throat and reclined in his seating. "Actually, I might possess the ability to contribute as well. My legal practice coordinates professional networking functions, and I could facilitate introductions to relevant contacts. You'd need to address your professional presentation, perhaps modernize your wardrobe selections, but prospects might exist for someone prepared to commence at the foundation level." His attention lingered on me in a manner that produced visceral discomfort, and I recognized that his proposition carried implications entirely disconnected from legitimate career advancement. "The scheduling aligns perfectly," Sloane continued, apparently oblivious to her intended spouse's inappropriate suggestions. "I commence my new function on January 2nd, and I'll require assistance immediately. You could submit your resignation notice to that bookshop following the holiday period." My father extracted his mobile device and initiated notation entry. "I'm documenting everyone's recommendations. We should construct an implementation strategy with defined timelines and responsibility metrics. Responsibility metrics are essential, Aunt Margot concurred. We cannot permit emotional considerations to supersede practical determinations. Vivienne requires structure, not compassion. As they conducted discussions regarding my future, as though I constituted a project demanding their collective administration, I observed how their language had transformed. They referenced me in the third person, despite my physical presence at the table, reducing me to a complication necessitating their unified resolution. Has anyone contemplated what Vivienne herself desires? I questioned softly. The inquiry appeared to catch them unprepared, as though they hadn't anticipated my participation in the orchestration of my own existence. What you desire and what you require represent distinct concepts. My mother answered with firmness. Occasionally, family must render challenging determinations for the collective benefit. The collective benefit, I echoed, examining the phrase. Sloane deposited her wine vessel and assumed her corporate executive bearing. Consider this situation objectively. I understand this feels overwhelming, but accomplished individuals surround themselves with other accomplished individuals. You've experienced excessive isolation, generating decisions from a constricted viewpoint. A constricted viewpoint, I repeated. Precisely. Uncle Reginald interjected. You're conceptualizing on a diminished scale because your existence has contracted. Employment in retail, solitary residence, absence of meaningful social bonds, this pattern lacks healthfulness. Tatum gestured with apparent wisdom. When I commenced my property career, I was compelled to completely reconstruct my mental framework. Cease conceptualizing like a purchaser, and commence conceptualizing like an enterprise proprietor. You require an identical variety of metamorphosis. What variety of metamorphosis? I inquired. Embrace factual circumstances. My father stated without embellishment. You've accumulated 32 years with nothing demonstrable to exhibit. No professional advancement, no consequential partnerships, no assets meriting mention. Sloane is presenting you a rescue line. The chamber descended into stillness as his pronouncement suspended in the atmosphere. I surveyed the table, examining expressions ranging from sympathetic to frustrated, all unified in their conviction that they comprehended my existence more thoroughly than I did myself. There's an additional matter, Sloane announced, her voice assuming the register of someone preparing to deliver particularly welcome information. Prescott and I have a revelation that renders this family gathering even more momentous. She elevated herself and clasped Prescott's hand, her engagement diamond intercepting the dining area illumination. We're expecting a child. The arrival is scheduled for August. The relatives detonated into congratulatory exclamations and animated discussion concerning nursery preparations and infant appellations. Amid the celebration, Sloane redirected her attention toward me with an expression of satisfaction that failed to reach her eyes. This child will inherit everything of consequence in the family heritage, she proclaimed. Given your decision to abstain from contributing to our family's advancement, perhaps you could contribute by providing child care assistance. It would furnish your existence with authentic purpose. The proposition suspended in the atmosphere like a gauntlet thrown. They expected me to transform into the family domestic, grateful for the privilege of orbiting Sloane's achievements, while dedicating my efforts to supporting her expanding domain. I'd be privileged to assist with the infant, I uttered gently, maintaining my disguise while internally marveling at their presumption. Excellent. My mother brought her palms together. Observe how considerably improved circumstances become when we collaborate, Vivienne. You could relocate to the family residence and provide infant care while serving as Sloane's coordinator. It represents a comprehensive solution. As they persisted in architecting my diminished future, I recognized that this intervention wasn't oriented toward facilitating my prosperity. It was designed to guarantee my acceptance of positioning as the family disappointment, grateful for whatever remnants they elected to distribute. They required me to remain insignificant, so they could perceive themselves as substantial. The evening was approaching a considerably more intriguing development. Following the intervention presentations, the relatives migrated back to the primary gathering space for coffee and confections. Sloane established herself in the central seating position, continuing to receive congratulations regarding both her pregnancy and her professional accomplishments. The discussion naturally gravitated toward her role in the organization's expansion initiatives. "Elaborate further on this chief executive position," Uncle Reginald requested, settling into his preferred chair with a replenished bourbon. "What precisely constitutes Pinnacle Dynamics as an enterprise?" Sloane's expression illuminated with the enthusiasm of someone genuinely passionate about their professional domain. "We're a technology consultancy specializing in data analysis and software deployment for major corporations. My promotion positions me at the helm of our most ambitious growth undertaking to date." "That registers as impressive," Tatum acknowledged. "But what does it actually signify in terms of financial performance and competitive positioning?" "We're strategically maneuvering to emerge as a dominant force in the enterprise technology sector," Sloane elaborated. "The consulting marketplace represents billions in value, and we're pursuing Fortune 500 organizations requiring sophisticated technological solutions." Prescott retrieved his mobile device and commenced research. Sloane is exercising modesty. "Pinnacle has experienced 300% expansion over the preceding 2 years. She's been instrumental in securing multiple major agreements." "Regarding major agreements," Sloane interjected, unable to suppress her excitement. "I'm approaching finalization of the most significant transaction in organizational history. We're discussing an alliance that could multiply our annual earnings instantaneously." My father leaned forward with evident interest. "What category of alliance generates that magnitude of consequence?" "A technology colossus desires to utilize our services for a comprehensive infrastructure renovation," Sloane responded. "The agreement represents millions in value, and the client specifically requested my personal oversight of the relationship." Aunt Margot positioned her coffee vessel with a delicate sound. "Which organization? Anyone we might recognize?" Sloane hesitated dramatically, relishing the moment preceding her significant disclosure. "Nexus Forge Technologies." The designation impacted the room like a concussive blast. Everyone commenced simultaneous vocalization, articulating astonishment and posing inquiries. Even grandmother Lenore demonstrated increased alertness in her chair. "Nexus Forge Technologies," Uncle Reginald echoed, immediately entering the name into his device. "Merciful heavens, Sloane. Their market valuation exceeds $1 billion. $1.2 billion, precisely speaking," Sloane corrected with evident satisfaction. "They represent one of the most prosperous technology enterprises in the nation, and they selected Pinnacle as their exclusive consulting collaborator." Tatum produced a low whistle. "I've encountered articles concerning Nexus Forge. They maintain extraordinary selectivity regarding business associations. How did you succeed in capturing their attention?" "Professional networking and established reputation," Sloane explained. "Information circulates within the technology sector when you consistently deliver exceptional outcomes. Nexus Forge's representatives approached us specifically because of initiatives I've administered." Prescott continued his research on his mobile device, reading passages aloud from various business periodicals. "Attend to this information. Nexus Forge Technologies, established 8 years prior, specializes in proprietary software solutions for enterprise clientele. Annual revenue surpasses $400 million. Primary headquarters situated in downtown Philadelphia, with subsidiary operations distributed nationally. $400 million in yearly revenue," my father repeated, clearly affected. "Sloane, this alliance could revolutionize your entire professional trajectory." "That's precisely my assessment," Sloane concurred. "Nexus Forge's proprietor maintains famous privacy, but the executive team I've been interfacing with treats me as an equal. They recognize capability when they encounter it. I occupied my peripheral chair in silence, absorbing every utterance with deliberate attention. They possessed no awareness they were dissecting my organization, my personnel, my financial streams. The irony approached overwhelming proportions. "What intelligence do you possess regarding Nexus Forge's governance?" Aunt Margot inquired. "These billion-dollar enterprises typically possess captivating origin narratives," Prescott recited from his display. "The founder and principal owner maintains anonymity, but business publications characterize them as a visionary entrepreneur who constructed the organization from nothing. Most coverage emphasizes Nexus Forge's innovative solutions and organizational culture rather than personal specifics concerning leadership. Anonymous proprietorship demonstrates intelligence, Uncle Reginald noted, maintains focus on commercial outcomes rather than individual celebrity. I hold respect for that methodology. Sloan nodded with emphasis. Precisely. Nexus Forge operates with remarkable professionalism. Every interaction I've experienced with their team has been refined and calculated. They represent the category of organization that enhances Pinnacle's reputation through mere association. When do you formalize this alliance? Tatum inquired. Tomorrow, actually, Sloan replied. Christmas Day. The Nexus Forge team expressed preference for convening prior to the new year, and I wasn't prepared to permit holiday scheduling to obstruct this opportunity. My mother's brow contracted slightly. Conducting business on Christmas seems atypical. Are you confident this organization maintains appropriate professional boundaries? Mother, this represents $1 billion transaction. Sloan laughed. I'd conduct business on Christmas morning if they requested it. Besides, the meeting constitutes merely a formality for document execution and implementation timeline discussions. Prescott located another publication and commenced reading. Nexus Forge Technologies maintains subsidiary operations across more than 40 states, including retail collaborations and community investment initiatives. The organization has contributed millions to literacy programs and educational technology endeavors. Philanthropic activity typically indicates positive character, Grandmother Lenore observed. Organizations that invest in communities tend toward ethical business partnerships. That element impressed me most throughout our negotiations. Sloan confirmed. Nexus Forge's representatives posed detailed inquiries regarding Pinnacle's community involvement and employee treatment policies. Their interests extend beyond mere profitability. Uncle Reginald chuckled softly. Intelligent business methodology. Ethical partnerships diminish legal exposure and cultivate superior long-term associations. This Nexus Forge proprietor evidently comprehends sustainable business principles. As they persisted in examining Nexus Forge's commercial practices and community standing, I found myself marveling at how proximate they came to recognizing who they were actually discussing. Every charitable endeavor they praised, every business determination they admired, every innovative solution they celebrated, I had personally conceived and executed those programs. The meeting venue is somewhat unconventional, though, Sloan appended, almost as a secondary consideration. Rather than Nexus Forge's central headquarters, they prefer convening at some subsidiary address in the downtown area. Probably a smaller operational space they utilize for confidential negotiations. What's the specific location? My father questioned. Sloan retrieved her mobile device and navigated through electronic correspondence. 4721 Birchwood Avenue. It's cataloged as a Nexus Forge subsidiary facility, though I'm uncertain what category of operation they conduct there. My circulatory system seemed to crystallize. 4721 Birchwood Avenue constituted my bookstore's address. Nexus Forge officially possessed the building through a subsidiary corporation, but Sloan was preparing to enter my workplace anticipating an encounter with enigmatic executives. Birchwood Avenue. Tatum contemplated. That's situated downtown in the vicinity of the Cultural District, correct? Curious selection for a technology organization meeting. Technology enterprises frequently employ unconventional environments for creative conceptualization, Prescott proposed. Perhaps it functions as their innovation laboratory, or something analogous. Sloan lifted her shoulders dismissively. Whatever its nature, I'll be present at precisely 2:00 tomorrow afternoon. This meeting embodies everything I've labored toward throughout my professional life. As the relatives continued hypothesizing about Nexus Forge's commercial operations and my siblings' luminous prospects, I recognized I was confronting an impossibility. Within fewer than 24 hours, Sloan would materialize at my reading establishment, anticipating an audience with Nexus Forge executives, entirely oblivious that her disdained sister held ownership of the organization she was so desperate to impress. The evening had just acquired infinite additional complexity. The family's captivation with Nexus Forge Technologies precipitated an impromptu investigative session. Prescott established connection between his portable computer and the television display, and shortly everyone had assembled to examine the organizational website and media coverage. I observed from my marginal position as they dissected every publicly available detail concerning my commercial empire. Examine this employee satisfaction metric. Tatum indicated the display. 97% favorable assessments on employment evaluation websites. Nexus Forge must maintain extraordinary administrative practices. Uncle Reginald adjusted his spectacles to decipher the finer text. Average employee retention spans 8 years, and they provide profit participation, unlimited personal leave, and comprehensive medical coverage. This transcends mere success. It represents exemplary employment. The founder evidently comprehends that investing in personnel generates superior commercial outcomes, my father observed. Intelligent leadership philosophy. Sloan inclined forward, examining a press announcement concerning Nexus Forge's most recent software introduction. I've been contemplating their decision-making methodology. Every interaction I've experienced suggests someone possessing exceptional precision and extended strategic consideration. What category of interactions? Aunt Margot inquired. Contract discussions were uncommonly comprehensive. Sloan elaborated. Most organizations concentrate on deliverables and schedules, but Nexus Forge's team posed detailed questions regarding Pinnacle's organizational culture, employee advancement programs, and community collaborations. Prescott navigated to an updated page displaying Nexus Forge's charitable contribution history. They've donated in excess of $15 million to educational initiatives over the preceding 3 years. Examine this inventory of beneficiary organizations. As he recited through the recipients, my cardiac rhythm accelerated. Several organizations on the register received funding through programs I had personally architected, including the Literacy Initiative at my own bookstore. The Lakewood Literacy Initiative. Prescott read. Downtown Philadelphia Food Distribution Center. Westbrook Elementary Technology Program. Maplewood Community Center Youth Development Program. Those all constitute local organizations, my mother observed. Nexus Forge's proprietor must possess strong connections to the Philadelphia region. Grandmother Lenore squinted toward the display. That's admirable. Excessive numbers of affluent individuals forget their own communities once they attain prosperity. Here's an intriguing publication, Tatum announced, assuming control of the portable computer. Business Weekly published a profile last year speculating about Nexus Forge's anonymous founder. Attend to this analysis. She commenced reading aloud. Industry sources characterize Nexus Forge's leadership as methodical, innovative, and intensely private. The organization's accelerated expansion suggests an entrepreneur possessing both technical expertise and exceptional commercial instincts. Several competitors have attempted recruitment of Nexus Forge's founder through intermediaries, but all approaches have been courteously declined. Loyalty represents a rarity in the technology sector, Uncle Reginald commented. Most accomplished entrepreneurs transition between ventures or dispose of holdings to larger corporations. Nexus Forge's founder appears dedicated to constructing something enduring. Sloan retrieved her personal device and accessed Nexus Forge's professional networking profile. Their organizational communications emphasize employee accomplishments and community impact rather than self-promotion. Considerably different from most corporate digital strategies. What about photographs of leadership? My father inquired. Most organizations showcase their executive team. Prescott navigated to Nexus Forge's organizational page, which featured images of departmental directors and senior administrators, but conspicuously excluded any imagery of the primary owner. Merely personnel profiles for regional directors and project administrators. The founder maintains complete anonymity. Intelligent maneuver, Tatum assessed. Avoiding personal publicity permits concentration on commercial outcomes. Excessive numbers of entrepreneurs become celebrities and lose perspective on actual organizational performance. As they persisted in exploring Nexus Forge's digital presence, I observed how their investigation repeatedly circled toward community engagement and employee treatment. Every article, assessment, and business profile emphasized the organization's ethical practices and long-term orientation. Here's something remarkable. Aunt Margot proclaimed, reading from a trade periodical on her personal device. Nexus Forge has never terminated employees, even during economic contractions. They retrained personnel for alternative functions rather than reducing workforce. That's virtually unprecedented in the technology sector, Prescott acknowledged. Most organizations prioritize quarterly financial performance over workforce continuity. Sloan appeared contemplative. Throughout our negotiations, Nexus Forge's representatives inquired how Pinnacle manages employee development during challenging intervals. I considered it an unusual question at the time, but now it registers with clarity. They're assessing potential collaborators based on values alignment, my father concluded. Nexus Forge desires associations with organizations that share their approach to business ethics. Uncle Reginald nodded with approval. Sloan, you're establishing partnership with precisely the appropriate category of organization. This relationship could define Pinnacle's reputation for generations. As they persisted in their investigation, Prescott discovered a collection of photographs from various charitable functions Nexus Forge had sponsored. The images depicted organizational representatives presenting substantial donation instruments to local organizations, but the photographs were carefully composed to prevent identification of senior leadership. Observe this particular image. He indicated a notably indistinct photograph from a literacy fundraising event. There's an individual in the background, presenting a $50,000 contribution to the Lakewood Library Foundation. But the illumination renders facial identification impossible. The family circulated Prescott's device, each person scrutinizing the shadowy figure in the photograph. When the device reached me, I recognized the image immediately. It derived from the previous year's literacy celebration, where I had personally delivered funding for expanded programming. The woman appears young, Aunt Margot observed when the device returned to her possession. Probably in her 30s. That represents impressive leadership for someone so early in their professional trajectory. Tatum examined the image again. The posture and attire suggest someone comfortable with public address, but not interested in personal attention. Very focused on the cause, rather than documentation opportunities. Sloan studied the image with intensity. There's something familiar about the silhouette, but I cannot identify it specifically. Perhaps I've encountered similar photographs from other Nexus Forge events. Familiar in what manner? My mother inquired. Merely a general sensation of recognition. Sloan responded with a dismissive gesture. Probably nothing specific. Accomplished women in commerce often project similar professional presence. Uncle Reginald laughed softly. Once you're collaborating directly with Nexus Forge, you'll probably encounter their leadership team eventually. This anonymous founder cannot remain invisible indefinitely. Actually, I'm anticipating tomorrow's meeting will provide additional insight into organizational leadership, Sloan expressed. Significant partnerships typically involve senior executives, even if the founder remains private. Prescott disconnected his portable computer from the television display. You're extraordinarily fortunate, Sloan. Nexus Forge represents everything Pinnacle aspires to become. This partnership resembles receiving mentorship from industry legends. That's precisely my perspective. Sloan concurred. Association with Nexus Forge will elevate Pinnacle's reputation and create access to opportunities we could never approach independently. The relatives commenced discussing Sloan's professional trajectory and the potential long-term advantages of the Nexus Forge relationship. They hypothesized about expansion possibilities, increased revenue projections, and the professional networking opportunities that would inevitably materialize. This could represent the commencement of something extraordinary, my mother declared, radiating with pride. Sloan, you've positioned yourself to learn from the industry's finest. As they persisted in celebrating Sloan's impending triumph, I occupied my chair in silence, absorbing the irony of their enthusiasm. Tomorrow, Sloan would discover that her despised sibling was the anonymous founder they had devoted the evening to researching and admiring. The woman they considered a failure had constructed precisely the category of organization they respected most. The revelation was going to shatter more than merely Sloan's expectations. As the evening progressed into its concluding phase, the family's energy achieved unprecedented heights of celebratory excitement. Sloan had emerged as the undisputed focal point, addressing inquiries regarding her future aspirations and accepting counsel from relatives eager to contribute to her success narrative. Let us propose an appropriate toast. Uncle Reginald announced, retrieving a premium bottle of champagne from the kitchen. This Nexus Forge partnership merits recognition with something superior to ordinary wine. While he occupied himself with opening the champagne, Sloane's mobile device vibrated with an incoming communication. She examined the display and immediately straightened her posture. "It's Nexus Forge," she informed the room. "I need to accept this privately." She withdrew to the corridor, abandoning the relatives to speculate regarding the communication's purpose. I strained to capture conversational fragments, but Sloane spoke too softly for clear comprehension. When she returned after approximately 10 minutes, her expression combined excitement with subtle bewilderment. "Everything satisfactory?" Prescott inquired. "More than satisfactory," Sloane responded, though her tone suggested some uncertainty. That was Miranda Hayes, Nexus Forge's executive coordinator. She confirmed tomorrow's meeting and provided supplementary details. "What category of details?" my father questioned. Sloane consulted her device notes. "The meeting location is definitively 4721 Birchwood Avenue, but it's not precisely what I anticipated. According to Miranda, the building accommodates multiple Nexus Forge operations, including some variety of research facility and community engagement center." Research facility, Tatum echoed. "That registers logically for a technology organization, probably where they develop innovative software solutions." Miranda also mentioned that Nexus Forge's founder specifically requested to conduct this meeting personally. Sloane continued. "Apparently, Pinnacle's proposal impressed them sufficiently to justify direct involvement from organizational leadership." The relatives erupted in excited congratulations, praising Sloane's achievement in attracting personal attention from such an accomplished entrepreneur. Uncle Reginald finally succeeded in opening the champagne and commenced distributing glasses to everyone. "This is unprecedented," Prescott declared, accepting his glass. "Anonymous billionaires don't schedule personal meetings with prospective partners. Sloane, you've accomplished something extraordinary." "What additional information did Miranda provide?" Aunt Margot inquired. Sloane navigated through her notes. "The meeting is scheduled for precisely 2:00 tomorrow afternoon." Miranda emphasized punctuality and mentioned that the founder appreciates direct communication and thorough preparation. "Sounds like someone who values professionalism," my mother observed. "You'll integrate seamlessly with their organizational culture." "There was one unusual request," Sloane appended. Miranda suggested I bring any relatives who might be interested in learning about Nexus Forge's community partnerships. She indicated the founder enjoys discussing local business relationships. Uncle Reginald elevated his eyebrows. "Bringing family to a commercial meeting is unconventional, but if they're genuinely interested in community connections, it could demonstrate Pinnacle's local foundations." "Should we accompany you?" Tatum inquired eagerly. "I'd welcome the opportunity to meet someone who constructed a billion-dollar organization from nothing." Sloane contemplated the suggestion. Miranda specifically mentioned that the founder values authentic relationships over formal business presentations. Having familial support might actually strengthen our partnership proposal. "Where precisely is this meeting location?" my father asked. "We should coordinate transportation and arrival schedules." 4721 Birchwood Avenue, Sloane reiterated. "It's in the cultural district near that modest bookshop where Vivian works." "Actually, that's probably convenient for you, Vivian. You could orient us to the neighborhood and perhaps provide a tour prior to the meeting." My throat constricted as I recognized the impossible circumstance materializing. Sloane desired me to escort the family to my own enterprise for a meeting with myself. The irony was becoming nearly unbearable. "I'd be pleased to assist with navigation," I managed to articulate. "Excellent." Sloane smiled, the first genuinely warm expression she had directed toward me throughout the entire evening. "You could even open the bookshop early tomorrow and allow us to wait there until meeting time. It would be convenient and demonstrate to the Nexus Forge team that Pinnacle maintains strong local connections." Prescott retrieved his mobile device again. "I'm curious about this building. Let me determine if I can locate any additional information regarding Nexus Forge's operations there." He searched for several minutes, while the relatives continued toasting Sloane's achievement. When he raised his eyes, his expression displayed mild perplexity. "This is interesting," he announced. The building registration identifies Nexus Forge Technologies as the primary owner, but public records indicate it operates as a bookshop and community center. Very unusual for a technology organization. Perhaps they're utilizing retail operations as research facilities. Tatum proposed. Certain organizations test innovative technologies in real-world environments prior to broader deployment. Sloan nodded with consideration. That would explain their interest in community partnerships. Direct interaction with local businesses and consumers provides valuable market research. Vivian, Uncle Reginald said, redirecting his attention toward me. You're employed in that vicinity. Have you observed any unusual technological installations or research activities in neighboring businesses? I moved my head in negation carefully. The neighborhood is fairly traditional. Most businesses concentrate on artistic endeavors, handicrafts, and local services. Nothing that appears particularly technologically advanced. Well, tomorrow we'll obtain answers to all our questions, my mother declared, elevating her champagne vessel. To Sloane's achievement and the commencement of an exciting new chapter. The relatives toasted with enthusiasm, while I struggled with the escalating complexity of my circumstances. In fewer than 18 hours, I would need to reveal my identity to individuals who had devoted the evening treating me as a charity case, while simultaneously celebrating their respect for the organization I had constructed. Sloane's mobile device vibrated again, this time with a text communication. She examined it rapidly and smiled expansively. Miranda just confirmed that tomorrow's meeting will include a comprehensive tour of Nexus Forge's local operations. She proclaimed, "The founder desires to demonstrate their commitment to community investment and long-term business relationships. A personal tour from a billionaire entrepreneur." Grandmother Lenore expressed wonder. "Sloan, this is evolving into something considerably more significant than a simple commercial meeting." "I recognize that," Sloan responded, her excitement barely contained. Miranda mentioned that the founder rarely allocates time for extended discussions with prospective partners. This represents a degree of interest that could transform Pinnacle's entire future. As the relatives continued celebrating and planning for tomorrow's extraordinary opportunity, I excused myself to the restroom and finally permitted myself to process the surreal situation I had orchestrated. Tomorrow, I would reveal that the family disappointment they had just humiliated possessed ownership of the organization they respected most. The expressions on their faces would justify every moment of this evening's performance. Christmas morning materialized gray and frigid, with precipitation beginning to descend as my relatives assembled at my parents' residence for the morning meal prior to the Nexus Forge meeting. Despite the holiday, conversation concentrated entirely on Sloane's afternoon appointment and the potential implications for her professional trajectory. I barely achieved sleep last evening. Sloane acknowledged, adjusting her meticulously selected midnight blue ensemble. This meeting could transform everything. "You appear flawless," my mother assured her, "professional yet approachable. Precisely the impression you desire to project to a prospective business collaborator." Prescott straightened his neckwear and verified his timepiece. "We should depart by 1:30 to guarantee punctual arrival. Initial impressions carry enormous weight with accomplished entrepreneurs." The relatives had determined to attend the meeting as a demonstration of support for Sloane, positioning themselves as evidence of Pinnacle's robust local connections and family values. Everyone wore their finest garments and carried notation materials for documenting detailed observations regarding Nexus Forge's operations. "Vivian, you still intend to meet us at the bookshop?" Uncle Reginald inquired. "We'll require someone familiar with the neighborhood to assist our navigation. I'll arrive early to ensure everything is prepared," I responded, struggling to maintain vocal steadiness. At 1:15, I observed from my bookstore window as my family's vehicles arrived outside. Sloane emerged first, followed by my parents, Prescott, Uncle Reginald, Aunt Margot, Tatum, and even Grandmother Lenore, who had insisted on witnessing this historic moment despite her mobility limitations. I released the entrance lock and greeted them with the identical meek demeanor I had maintained throughout the previous evening. "Welcome to my workplace. The meeting location should be situated nearby." Sloane surveyed the bookstore with courteous interest, while the others examined the shelving and comfortable reading areas. "This is charming, Vivian. Very welcoming and intimate." Nexus Forge probably selected this neighborhood because of its authentic community atmosphere. Where precisely are we supposed to meet these executives? My father inquired, verifying his device for the current time. According to the address Miranda provided, it should be this exact building. Sloan responded, consulting her electronic correspondence. 4721 Birchwood Avenue. But I don't perceive any obvious entrance to technology facilities. I inhaled deeply, recognizing the moment had arrived to commence my revelation. Actually, there might be something you need to observe. I proceeded to the rear corner of the bookstore and depressed a concealed mechanism hidden behind a row of classic literary volumes. A section of the bookshelf rotated inward, revealing a contemporary glass portal leading to a sophisticated office environment beyond. "What is that?" Tatum exclaimed. "Executive offices," I responded simply, stepping through the hidden entrance. The relatives followed me into an elegantly appointed conference space, furnished with cutting-edge technology, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the metropolitan skyline, and walls displaying Nexus Forge Technologies' accolades and certifications. A substantial curved workstation dominated the far terminus of the space, with multiple computer displays showing real-time commercial analytics and market data. "This is extraordinary," Prescott breathed, examining the sophisticated arrangement. Nexus Forge constructed executive facilities behind a bookstore facade. Brilliant security methodology. Sloan approached the workstation area with caution, as though entering consecrated territory. The precision in detail is remarkable. This office probably cost more than most individuals' residences. I positioned myself behind the executive workstation and activated the primary computer system. Multiple displays illuminated, exhibiting Nexus Forge Technologies dashboards, financial reports, and operational summaries. The relatives gathered around, mesmerized by the scope and complexity of the data flowing across the monitors. "Vivian, we should probably wait outside," my mother suggested nervously. "This is confidential corporate space, and we don't want to interfere with important business equipment." "Actually," I stated, settling into the leather executive chair, "I believe the time has arrived for us to converse." Something in my tone caused them all to redirect their attention toward me. For the first time in years, I commanded their complete focus. "I am the Nexus Forge Technologies founder and chief executive officer you've been researching and admiring," I announced with composure. "This is my organization, my office, and my meeting with Sloan." The silence extended for approximately 30 seconds as they processed my declaration. Sloan was the first to vocalize, her voice barely exceeding a whisper. "That's impossible." I accessed my portable computer and displayed Nexus Forge's incorporation documents showing my name as founder and primary shareholder. Then I retrieved banking statements reflecting the organization's assets and my personal wealth, followed by business licenses and regulatory filings dating back 8 years. Vivian Chen Ashworth. I read from the legal documentation. Founder and Chief Executive Officer, Nexus Forge Technologies. Personal net worth approximately $1.4 billion as of December 24, 2024. Uncle Reginald collapsed into a nearby chair, staring at the evidence distributed across the desk. "This has to be some category of jest or misinterpretation." "No jest," I responded, accessing my executive calendar and displaying months of scheduled meetings with Fortune 500 organizations, technology industry leaders, and government officials. "I've been directing Nexus Forge Technologies since I was 24 years old." Sloan's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror as the implications clarified. "You've been deceiving us for years." "I haven't deceived anyone about anything," I corrected. "I possess ownership of the bookstore where I work, along with several other businesses. I've simply never corrected your assumptions regarding my success or financial circumstances." My father stared at the computer displays exhibiting real-time revenue streams and market analytics. "Why would you permit us to believe you were struggling financially?" "Because I wanted to observe how you treated someone you perceived as possessing no monetary or social standing," I explained. "Last evening's intervention demonstrated precisely the category of individuals you truly are." Aunt Margot located her voice. "But you acted so appreciative of our assistance and suggestions." I was curious to observe how far you'd proceed with your condescending charity. I responded. The employment applications, the budget planning materials, Sloane's offer to engage me as her minimum wage coordinator. It was all quite illuminating. Prescott extracted his mobile device and commenced frantically searching my name combined with Nexus Forge Technologies. Within moments, he located business articles featuring my organization and accomplishments, though most photographs depicted me from a distance, or in groups where individual identification proved difficult. Here, he said, presenting Sloane with an indistinct image from a technology conference. This woman delivering the keynote address on innovation leadership. It's definitively Vivian. Sloane seized the device and examined the photograph, comparing it to me seated behind the executive workstation. The evidence was undeniable. Yet she persisted in moving her head in denial. This doesn't register logically, she insisted. Accomplished entrepreneurs don't conceal themselves in bookshops pretending to be failures. I wasn't pretending to be anything. I declared, You determined I was a failure and treated me accordingly. I simply didn't correct your assumptions. Tatum finally located her voice. How long have you known about Pinnacle's contract proposal? I've been personally reviewing your partnership application for 6 weeks. I acknowledged. Your initial presentation was impressive, but I always investigate potential collaborators thoroughly, including their personal relationships and character. The relatives exchanged horrified glances as they recognized the implications. Everything they had articulated and done in my presence had been observed and potentially reported to the very individual Sloane was attempting to impress. You've been surveilling us, Sloane accused. I've been becoming acquainted with the sibling who wants to partner with my organization. I corrected. Character assessment constitutes a crucial component of business relationship evaluation. Uncle Reginald surveyed the sophisticated office space with renewed comprehension. All those inquiries Nexus Forge's representatives posed regarding organizational culture and employee treatment. That was you evaluating Pinnacle's values. Precisely. I don't collaborate with individuals who lack integrity or treat others poorly. Sloane's mobile device suddenly produced a ringing tone, and she answered automatically before recognizing the caller identification displayed Nexus Forge Technologies. Hello? Sloane, this is Miranda Hayes from Nexus Forge. Came the familiar voice through the speaker. I'm contacting you to inform you that our Chief Executive Officer has completed her evaluation of the Pinnacle Partnership proposal. Unfortunately, after reviewing all available information, she's decided to decline the contract. Sloane's face drained of color. But why? I believe the meeting proceeded favorably. The Chief Executive Officer was particularly concerned about character compatibility and Pinnacle's approach to family relationships and employee development. Nexus Forge Technologies prioritizes partners who demonstrate consistent respect for others, regardless of their perceived social or economic standing. The telephone communication concluded, leaving Sloane staring at her device in shock. Around the conference surface, my relatives began to comprehend that their behavior had been documented and evaluated by the very individual they had been attempting to impress. You destroyed my career, Sloane whispered. You destroyed your own career, I replied with firmness. I simply observed how you treat individuals when you believe they cannot affect your success. Nexus Forge Technologies doesn't collaborate with organizations that lack fundamental human decency. The silence in my office extended uncomfortably, as my relatives grappled with the complete reversal of everything they believed they understood about our relationships and my position in the world. Sloane remained motionless in her chair, staring at her device as though Miranda's communication might somehow reverse itself. I need to comprehend something, my father finally articulated, his voice hollow. If you've experienced this level of success for years, why didn't you inform us? I reclined in my executive chair, contemplating how to explain years of accumulated frustration and disappointment. I attempted to, actually, multiple times. Do you recall 3 years prior when I mentioned expanding my business operations? You assumed I meant adding a coffee service to the bookstore. That was different. My mother protested weakly. Was it? What about when I discussed my investment portfolio, and Uncle Reginald laughed and declared I probably possessed $50 in a savings account? or when I mentioned traveling to technology conferences, and Tatum assumed I was attending as some category of vendor. Aunt Margot shifted uncomfortably in her seat. We believed you were being optimistic about small business development. You believed I was delusional, I corrected. Every time I shared favorable news or mentioned professional achievements, someone in this family discovered a method to diminish or dismiss what I was communicating. Eventually, I ceased attempting to share anything meaningful about my actual existence. Prescott cleared his throat nervously. But surely you could have been more direct regarding your success. Like Sloane was direct regarding hers? I inquired pointedly. She announced every promotion, every salary increase, every professional achievement. You celebrated each milestone with enthusiasm and pride. When I shared similar information, you treated it like fantasy or delusion. Uncle Reginald surveyed the sophisticated office space, finally beginning to grasp the magnitude of what he was witnessing. This represents years of labor and enormous financial investment. You constructed all of this while we believed you were barely subsisting. I constructed this while you actively discouraged me from sharing my achievements, I clarified. There's a distinction between privacy and being systematically ignored. Sloane suddenly raised her eyes from her device, her expression shifting from shock to anger. You deliberately sabotaged my career out of some petty familial resentment. I evaluated a business partnership based on character and integrity. I replied calmly. The fact that you failed that evaluation reflects your choices, not mine. What choices? Sloane demanded. I've worked incredibly hard to construct my career. You worked hard to advance yourself while treating other individuals poorly, I stated. Last evening, you offered me a minimum wage position as your personal coordinator. You suggested I should be grateful for the opportunity to serve you. You announced that your infant would inherit everything worthwhile in the family because I hadn't contributed to your definition of success. The words suspended in the atmosphere, as Sloane recognized how her statement sounded when repeated back to her. Around the table, other relatives began shifting uncomfortably as they recalled their own contributions to the previous evening's intervention. We were attempting to assist you, Grandmother Lenore said quietly. You were attempting to make yourselves feel superior, I replied, though my tone remained gentle when addressing her. Assistance would involve inquiring what I needed or desired. Instead, you determined what my problems were, and imposed your solutions without consulting me. My father rubbed his temples, appearing older than he had the previous evening. What happens now? How do we progress from this circumstance? That depends on whether you're capable of treating me with the identical respect you demonstrated toward Sloane when you believed she was successful, I declared. Last evening proved that your familial affection is conditional on perceived social standing. Tatum located her voice again. But we love you, Vivian. We've always loved you. You love the concept of me conforming to your definition of acceptable family roles, I corrected. You were perfectly willing to humiliate me publicly and plan my entire future without my input, because you believed I was powerless to resist. Can you forgive us? My mother inquired, moisture beginning to form in her eyes. I studied her face, searching for genuine remorse, rather than simply regret at being caught in their cruelty. Forgiveness requires acknowledgement of what actually transpired, and commitment to different behavior going forward. What would that resemble? Uncle Reginald asked. It means treating individuals with dignity, regardless of their job titles, bank account balances, or social standing, I explained. It means recognizing that worth isn't determined by salary or professional achievements. Prescott had maintained unusual quietness since the revelation, but now he spoke up hesitantly. Regarding those networking opportunities I mentioned last evening, were completely inappropriate. I finished. Your suggestions had nothing to do with professional development and everything to do with exploiting someone you perceived as vulnerable and grateful. His face reddened as he recognized his behavior had been observed and evaluated by someone possessing the resources to hold him accountable. I apologize. That was wrong of me. Apologies are meaningful when they're followed by changed behavior, I replied. Sloane finally raised her eyes from her device, her anger beginning to transform into something approaching comprehension. I don't know how to process this. Everything I believed I knew about our family dynamics was incorrect. Not incorrect. I corrected. Simply incomplete. You knew the family dynamics perfectly well. You simply didn't realize that the sibling you were treating poorly possessed the power to affect your professional aspirations. Will you reconsider the Pinnacle partnership? She asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. Nexus Forge Technologies collaborates with organizations that demonstrate consistent ethical behavior and respect for others. If Pinnacle can prove that commitment over time, future opportunities might be possible. How would we prove that? Commence with how you treat your current employees, especially the ones in junior positions, I suggested. Then examine how you interact with service workers, vendors, and anyone else who cannot immediately benefit your career advancement. Aunt Margot leaned forward. What about the rest of us? How do we rebuild relationships with you? The same way you construct any healthy relationship, I replied. Through consistent, respectful behavior over time. Demonstrate that you value me as a person, rather than as someone who might be useful to your own objectives. My father surveyed the office again, absorbing the evidence of success they had completely overlooked. We failed you as a family. Completely and thoroughly. You failed to perceive me clearly. I agreed. But failure doesn't have to be permanent if you're willing to learn from it. Grandmother Lenore struggled to stand with her walking stick, then slowly proceeded around the desk to where I sat. I'm ashamed of how we treated you last evening. You deserved better from all of us, but especially from me. Her apology carried weight because it arrived without excuses or attempts to minimize the harm they had caused. I stood and embraced her carefully, appreciating her willingness to acknowledge the truth without deflection. Thank you for articulating that, I replied. It signifies more than you know. Over the subsequent hour, we continued conversing through years of accumulated misunderstandings and missed opportunities for genuine connection. Some relatives, like Grandmother Lenore and my father, seemed genuinely committed to rebuilding our relationships on healthier foundations. Others, particularly Tatum and Uncle Reginald, appeared more concerned about potential financial opportunities than actual family reconciliation. Sloane sat quietly for most of the conversation, processing the complete upheaval of her worldview. Finally, she spoke up again. I need to apologize for more than just last evening, she said slowly. I've spent years competing with you instead of supporting you. I believed your lack of obvious success made my achievements appear more impressive by comparison. Success isn't a zero-sum game, I replied. Your achievements don't become less meaningful because other individuals also succeed. I recognize that now, she acknowledged. But I didn't recognize it then, and I permitted that ignorance to damage our relationship. As Christmas Day afternoon progressed, we commenced the difficult work of rebuilding family connections based on honesty rather than assumptions. Some relationships would recover more readily than others, but the conversation had established a foundation for authentic connection rather than the performative dynamics that had dominated our interactions for years. There's something else you should know, I declared as the relatives prepared to depart. The literacy programs and community investments you read about last evening, they include funding for local educational initiatives, job training programs, and small business development grants. You've been assisting the community anonymously, my mother realized. I've been investing in the place I call home, I corrected. Success signifies nothing if it doesn't contribute to something larger than personal achievement. Sloane appeared contemplative. That's why Nexus Forge's representatives pose so many questions regarding community involvement during our negotiations. Precisely. I collaborate with organizations that share my commitment to lifting others up, rather than stepping on them to climb higher. As they gathered their outerwear and prepared to return to their Christmas celebrations, the family dynamics had shifted dramatically from the evening before. Instead of treating me as a charity case requiring their intervention, they now approached me with the category of respect they had always shown Sloane's achievements. But more importantly, they had begun to comprehend that true success involves how you treat others when you believe they cannot affect your life, not merely how you perform when you're attempting to impress someone powerful. Accompanying them to the door, I reflected on the strange satisfaction of observing individuals confront the consequences of their own character choices. Sloane had lost a professional opportunity, not because I was vindictive, but because she had revealed values incompatible with ethical business partnership. The evening had taught me something valuable as well, that I possessed more power than I realized to demand better treatment from individuals who claimed to love me. Establishing boundaries and maintaining standards wasn't cruel. It was necessary for healthy relationships. As I secured the bookstore and returned to my office, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth was finally visible, and whatever relationship survived, this revelation would be constructed on solid foundations rather than false assumptions. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to perceive themselves clearly and choose who they want to become next. Before you depart, I'd welcome hearing your thoughts. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with relatives who treated you differently based on your perceived success or standing? How do you believe individuals should handle situations where family members reveal their true character during challenging times? Please share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if you found Vivian's story meaningful. Subscribe for more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and discovering your strength in challenging relationships. Share this with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by other individuals' opinions. Thank you for listening to Vivian's journey, and I hope your holidays are filled with genuine love and respect from the individuals who matter most in your life.